thank you for everyone coming today. You're going to see a copy of the results presentation that we've been giving to the city for the last 10 or so days. In fact, I think if we totaled up today, we've probably seen about 30 institutions. But we also recognise that it's good to talk to our retail customers, and this is why when Tamsin offered us the opportunity to have this meeting today, we felt it was a great time to talk and maybe put it down on video for posterity. We're lucky today to actually have Tony with us, but Tony set up the company way back in 1982. Basically, Tony's expertise was in suspension design, and he had a colleague who was very good at noise, vibration and harshness, and a consultancy company was set up in 82. But what happened over a period of time is that a lot of the consultancy was moving offshore. The car development was moving offshore. And in the late 90s, the company kind of reinvented itself and took one of its many steps and became a supplier of machinery. And it started making machines that it itself would want to use, bearing in mind its expertise. And one thing I will say straight away is that we don't make anything that goes onto a vehicle. Okay, so we're not involved in the production of cars. You won't find our pieces of machinery on cars. But I can guarantee that any car you might have driven or any vehicle you might have been in the last few days would have been developed using machinery supplied by ABD. And in fact, all of the car companies, or the top 20 car companies in the world, routinely use AB Dynamics machines in the daily development of their vehicles. 95, in fact it's more than that, 98% this year has gone overseas. So we're a heavy exporter. And it's a strong focus on producing very high-end, high-quality products. So we design, we manufacture, and we distribute. And everything that we manufacture at our site at Bradford-on-Avon. And more recently, we just passed a landmark of over 90 employees. So the highlights you may or may not have seen. The company continues to generate an increase in revenues. In terms of the profit, this year we did incur an option cost of £372,000. We reward our staff on a regular basis with equity-based options. The first option scheme we actually set up was done before we actually listed onto AIM, and that came to an end last year. And one of the things that we always like to do is that all of our staff get options. But the downside is we did incur a cost. So if you look at our underlying profit, it's still increased by about 22.7% to 4.65 million, which is an increase from last year. I would caution that a 33% operating margin is about as good as it's going to get for this business. Any more than that, and you're really flogging a company too hard. And quite often you'll see a margin increase jump because we're trying to catch up with orders. But actually, if you want a sustainable business and you want people to stay with you, then you need to run this company in a measured way. We've always been a dividend payer. And in fact, since we listed on AIM, we've been putting a regular dividend increase of about 10% a year, which has been advantageous. And more importantly, perhaps looking for the future, we are declaring for the first time what our revenue book, our order book covers, and we're looking well into the Q3 of our full year 2017. Operationally, which is perhaps the more exciting part, is that the company's grown to a certain point where it actually has to have dedicated support engineers. We've got over 500 robot systems out in the field, and although we're using a reseller model to get our products into the field, you do need to support these things with well-educated, well-trained engineers. So we made a conscious step to put 2 engineers into Japan. We've also in Germany been training a team in Germany, and we also work very closely with our resellers to make sure there's a support network in place. And back at our headquarters in Bradford-on-Avon, we've now got, I think, 4 to 5 new engineers joined, and their job is to actually do the support. That's important for us because it allows us to start doing the development and R&D offline. By offline, I mean I'm not getting my best software engineer on the phone all the time to some guy on the field. You do need to get these things separated, and the company has grown to a point where it can actually have those kind of offline services. A new commercial director in Germany, again important. It's our first senior hire for a long time. Klaus joined us from a company called Kistler. He himself is well recognised in the industry. One of the important things that we see is that the German companies do like buying off other German companies. And the issue is that they will have conversations and there'll be working parties going on which we're not party to. So having a German speaker and a German national in Germany is allowing us to join the top table in terms of where the product development is going. Give you an example, a couple of months ago we became aware of a team called Pegasus. And Pegasus was a working group with all the car companies to look at the next generation of autonomous driving cars. And we weren't in it. And of course that's part of our market, and this is why we have Klaus with us. Klaus also has good relationships in India, Iran, Turkey and Russia, places that we really haven't done much business with, and we wish him well. So the simulator market, the partnership with Williams F1 you probably read about. We'll talk a bit about that later as to why simulation may be important to this company going forward. Track testing continues to grow at a rapid rate, and we'll look at some of the charts of where that demographic is. And perhaps more significantly, we've been talking about this for 5 years, and now we've actually started to build the factory, and we'll be able to show you a picture with steelwork. And hopefully in the next 2 weeks, there should be a roof. And our plan is to be in there by around about August. And it's important for us because we'll explain how that gives us the capacity and the headroom to grow in the future. And the reorganisation and the general improvement in supply chain has really made a difference to our company. We started that programme about 2 years ago, and what we've learned can be replicated when we go into the new factory. So the key drivers for the company, the global automotive R&D is rising, up to $109 billion last year. And it's driven in part by the fact that the Chinese are increasing their growth, the rapid growth of car development. What's happening in China is that they are switching their way from just copying car designs or manufacturing car designs to actually making cars that their own customers will be pleased to drive. So if you're an aspiring Chinese businessman, you tend to buy the Western derivative of that car. The trick here is that they would like to be able to design their own cars, and for that you need a toolkit, and the toolkit will be ABD equipment amongst other people's products. So that's a good signal what's going on. Also, 45 billion of that is spent in Japan. Japan is still one of the biggest spenders by region of all of the regions. And that's testament to the fact that companies like Toyota have over 3 of our large machines and over 50 of our robots, and still continue to be one of our major customers. One of the other areas that seems to be growing rapidly, I'm going to use an acronym and you might be aware of it. ADAS stands for Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. Many years ago there used to be this Euro NCAP that classified the safety of your car. And Euro NCAP was about passive safety. It was about airbags, it was about seat belts, deformable fronts, collapsible columns. And although it actually did a lot to start saving lives and saving injuries, it started to cost the insurance companies a fortune, because actually a minor knock could actually mean the car could be written off. So they were very strongly encouraging technology to mitigate crash. And that's where ADAS came from. And the first company to come in with the technology was Volvo. And they had an emergency braking system in 2009. And now most cars you buy today will have some form of emergency braking system. And now it's moved on from there. You've got warning systems that look 100 metres ahead. You've got various systems that keep you within the white lines. It's all becoming a big area. And also, this is the technology that will be used eventually in full autonomous. And that has been driving the growth for a lot of our business. So robots for track testing, and what we call the soft targets for evaluation of crash scenarios, that has driven very much the track testing business in the last 2 years, and especially this year. Investment, we talked about the capacity. In fact, we've taken on 2 extra new facilities this year to meet demand. And the expectation is in late 2017 is we'll be able to retrench back to the single place. We'll still have to keep our existing facility because this has been 7 years in the planning, Tony.
Yep, nearly 8, I think.
Nearly 8. And the building we have now would have been suitable to us 4 years ago, but now it's actually a bit under capacity. So just the way it is. We continue to recruit high caliber personnel. I think one of the first questions I was asked by some of the guys in the room today is, how are you getting on with the recruiting? It's not easy. I feel that we can attract the good engineers. We have in fact we almost have 0 rate of churn when it comes to personnel, especially on the engineering side. And we always are on the lookout for good, highly qualified and highly motivated engineers. On the product development, a whole new range of track testing products and its development of new technology for the lab testing. And what the new factory gives us, which we never had before, is the capacity to build those machines in a proper environment. So it's, for those who might have visited, Tamsin, you've been to see our place, we are living on top of each other. But the whole idea is to create the capacity to be able to give headroom to grow. So I caution that the factory doesn't release a huge pent up demand that's going to wash down it's actually going to give us headway, and it's headway we actually need. So customers, this is a broad graph basically showing what's been bought by customers in the last 10 years. The larger the name, the more we've sold. And you'll see that there are the companies you expect to see in there, like Toyota, Daimler, Volvo, Hyundai. But equally, you'll start to see that there are companies like Bosch and Continental, and companies like Thatcham and Ideada. And these are testing houses and supporting companies. So the motor industry is quite inclusive. And in fact, the amount of R&D that's done by the car companies is breathtaking. The breadth is quite amazing. When we talked about $109 billion, we're talking about one of the third by sector. So in fact, if you look at the top 20 companies spending by R&D, 6 of those companies are motor companies, with Volkswagen at the top, Toyota, Honda, GM, Ford and Daimler. So the spend on R&D is not just large, but it's very diffuse. Everything for infotainment systems, emissions, engines, safety, you name it. Massive industry. And what you're also starting to see in here is companies like High-Tech, JMC, IPW. These are Chinese companies that perhaps here in the West we've never heard about, but actually on this investigation, some of them are making more cars than the whole of Renault. So it's a big industry. And I was in Shanghai last month talking to our distributor out there, and he told me he had 25 salespeople dedicated to ABD products. And he also told me that there are about 100 OEMs he has to visit in a year. So it's a huge market. And I'm pretty sure if I had actually been setting up an office in China, I wouldn't have had 25 salespeople, and in fact I wouldn't have known how to control them. If you don't get anything else out of this presentation, understand this. So on the track testing side, we've got these driving robots, what we call ADAS targets and driverless systems. Rather than describe what they are, I urge you to go onto the YouTube websites and look at what these things are. But this is track testing of total vehicles on a track. A whole lot of data gets generated from this. Then you've got the measurement, and this is one of our big SPMM machines, and Tony mentioned that we have sold 2 to Myra. That's the second one we sold to Myra. And they specifically said that we wanted a machine that can handle large SUVs with high weights and long wheel travel. And that is an experimental, or was an experimental, long wheelbase Range Rover. So no guessing as to who their customer was. All of that data is generated, goes into modelling, mathematical modelling. And the car designer of today sits in front of the model and designs the car. And he uses all the model, all the data that comes from tests like ours and other people, and he creates the car. Then he goes to prototype. And the prototype then is an opportunity for the test driver to get in the car for the first time and find out just how accurate that model was or isn't. Then it goes back through the whole track test, validation, measurement, and then back through the prototyping again. So the issue about simulation is hypothetical. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get the driver to drive the model in the computer before it becomes a prototype? Coincidentally, Formula One was facing a similar situation about 10 years ago. They were restricted on the amount of testing they were allowed to do to try and save money and make it more favourable for the teams with less money. So what did the teams with all the money do? They came out with super duper simulators. And in fact, the gap is now wider than ever before because poor old Manor, they can't, they're using a little Sega PlayStation. Williams and the rest of the team are using very advanced motion platforms. And we saw what they were doing, and we realised that actually the story there was very similar to what's been happening in the field. And the aspiration is, and it is an aspiration, the driver in loop, is you may never go to prototype. You may just be able to do the whole virtual sign-off. Tony's sceptical. I kind of joined him on that one. But the fact is that the use of simulators is becoming more and more commonplace in the car industry, not just for vehicle dynamics, but also for scenario planning for driverless cars and safety systems. And it's for us, it's an opportunity. The partnership with Williams is a very clear one. We have a licensing deal for applications for automotive use. We're looking to make an automotive grade of their simulator. Progress has now started on that. We're already out marketing it because we think that we don't want to be late into the game. But I think what we can offer that the competitors can't is that we can bring all of this technology to bear and model this in the simulation. So if someone goes out and does a driverless track work, then that data can be brought back and it can be modelled in the simulator. Likewise, the data that's coming off these machines could also be modelled in the simulator. So it fits into the context of how the car industry is starting to work. So, virtual testing, virtual simulation, accurate and repeatable measurement. And you can't do any of the modelling unless you've got accurate and repeatable measurement. And this is an area where we think there is growth in terms of these larger machines. We mentioned before our distribution, our global reach. The reseller model does work for us, but what we have done is hybridized it slightly. So in Japan, for example, we have a sole agreement with the distributor out there. We've embedded 2 of our engineers, and she's renamed the company ABDP Japan, so it feels like it is a Japanese business. In Germany, we now have 2 people in there, one non-commercial looking at the liaison, and the second is been with us for a while. What I would say is most of these resellers, ABD represents their maximum value. I mean, they don't tend to sell other people's products. In China, we've now represented about 60% of his revenue. So we're an important customer to them, and they're important to us. And what could be a weakness is also, I believe, a strength, because these guys have now been with us for many years, and I think we've built very strong and close relationships. Again, just remember, mechanical, electrical software, all under one roof. All the design is done by ourselves. None of it is subbed out. And that's where we retain the IP. And that's where you need to have command of these 3 disciplines, and then you can start thinking about making the machines that we make. I talked about manufacturing. We have spread the capacity. We've gone across 4 sites because we had to catch up with demand. Time will come when we can bring that back together. I've mentioned the simulator already. If I had to describe it, it's about 4 components. So you've got the actual motion platform, which is very dynamic. You've got a very, very sophisticated motion queuing software, which translates your actions into a motion on the platform. You've got a physics engine and a graphics engine that actually put the image onto the projector. So this would be a wrap-round image of a street scene. And then you've got the ability to take the customer's car model, and it will accept anyone's model and stick it into the computer. And the beauty here is you have a very, very short latency between here and the screen. That's what makes it work. If you have anything that's slightly off kilter, anything that is out of tune, you will feel sick. And that's always been the shortcoming of simulators. And it's this dynamic nature of this platform that makes it so useful. And in the last sort of 3 months, we've observed, 4 meetings at Williams, where we've had drivers, to drive the Formula One simulator, and who wouldn't want to? And they're saying it's fantastic. This is something that we're really excited by, and that's given us the confidence to move forward. I said I'll show you the building. There it is. So that's what it will look like, and that's what it is at the moment, from a different angle. It's important to us. We've been talking about this for a while. We've had to put in new capacity, so the company is slightly split, and we all look forward to the day we can come back under one roof. So you've seen the highlights. We talked about continued growth. As you can see, the company has a pretty solid record. We listed on AIM early in 2013, and a lot of the products that were developed by Tony and the team back in 2010 drove the initial growth. And then more latterly, it's been the new products that drive this company onwards and the new markets. So in terms of geography, these percentages move back and forwards normally because there is a large rig. So there's a large rig sold in Japan. So last year is actually smaller than this year. But actually this year for Japan, it's been a record year for robots. So it's a pretty clear split. And you can see how important Japan is. Talk about China, Japan, China. When we talk about Europe, I'm afraid we talk about Germany. And North America is growing, but it's very disappointing. I think most of the R&D that's done by GM and Ford is done in Europe. But you can see it's a pretty clear split. And obviously Korea is another area of significant growth. And we've got an excellent reseller out there. And the analysis by product area, we mentioned it already, but you can see the split. It's not that lab testing is going down in value, it's just that it's going down in percentages. And the team, there is competition inside the company, and they rightfully want to reclaim the slice with the simulator.
When you're doing all this work for the top 20, individually, do they get you to sign some sort of agreement that you won't reveal anything to the other 19?
They would like to, but I have to say, my experience is that the German car companies are really quite enlightened. What they say to you is that we want you to make this for us, and we want to be the first adopter, and we want you to sell it to other people. Thinking, well, why would you want that? They said, because we want the version 2, 3 and 4. We don't want to wait for you to, and this is where the Americans lose out, because they do tie you in. And there was an opportunity with Ford that we simply walked away from. And in fact, the company that did go in there has been fleeced big time. So the beauty of this is that, yes, okay, we appreciate you're going to sell this to other people, and we kind of expect you to, but just make sure that when the software upgrades come on, we're the first in line for the software upgrades. And that allows us to expense all our R&D, and it also allows us to expand that to other customers quite quickly. So if you can nail down Volvo, Daimler and Toyota, you can get the rest of the industry, because they tend to be followers, the rest of the industry.
There are times when we come up with the agreement and we make sure that the license things are actually on our side, and that usually works.
I said the profit, I said there was an adjustment this year, 273,000 of option costs. I have to say, Tony and I struggle with this one.
Does anybody know of the Black Skulls method?
Yes.
Yeah,
especially in mind that we're going to get revenue back in, but anyway, hey, it is what it is. But the best way to show you what our underlying profit is this.
When you say everyone in the company has options, are they based on a percentage of their salary, or how do you do it so that everybody gets some sort of incentive?
Yeah, that's the incentive. Simple as that.
And it works, because I've even had a cleaner a few years ago come up to me when something was delivered to the shop, and he said, "Tony, there's some paint being scratched on that. I haven't let the driver go, because you ought to have a look at it." And he was there doing the right thing, not his job, but he did see that it had been damaged, and we sent it straight back. And that's a nice example from the guy who didn't really know what the thing was used for, but he could see a damn great scratch or a splurge on the side of the paintwork was not satisfactory. And that's lovely, lovely.
Have you noticed a change in culture since you listed? The headcount's obviously grown significantly since listing, and the listing has helped you to drive the business further forward?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yes to that. Change in culture, we're a much bigger company, so what was very much a family company 20 years ago can no longer be, and I think that's inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, we've invested quite heavily recently in the software side, and I have to say, software engineers are the most singular people you can ever meet. But it's interesting to see how the sort of the company's changing, and how the senior managers are taking responsibility in the organisation, which is what we always wanted. Because when you get to 20 million, you do not know everything that's going on. You have to be able to delegate it, and hopefully these young guys are going to take the business forward. They're the leaders of the organisation. The directors.
That's something that Tim's very much piloted, and very glad that he has done. I mean, it's the sort of thing that we didn't do anything like well enough before we went to market, and all credit to Tim.
The advantage that I've got is I'm not a technical expert. So if I'm relied on for the technical ability in the company, we're in big trouble. But luckily there are some intelligent, bright guys in the company who are taking on the mantle.
So of the 90 people in the business, how many now relate to the software side of the business, as opposed to some of the other disciplines compared with?
Well, we've got 10 dedicated software people. Yeah. But it's not just how that works, because you've also got mechanical engineers who write software. A software guy per se cannot write software for dynamic simulation, because he doesn't understand dynamic simulation. So what you're looking for is a mechanical engineer with a software angle.
Out of the 90, I guess it takes a number of years before the options become theirs, so they cache them.
Okay.
Do they hold them, or as proof of the pudding would be, do they
Well,
sell
actually,
them?
I think I've got a number for you. So when we did an option scheme ages before we actually listed on the stock market, and they were EMI option schemes, got vested over a 3-year period. Now they've all been exercised, and my understanding is that the staff are still hanging on to 40% of those. So I think that's pretty good. I mean, for a lot of people, it was a life-changing product. They could put deposits down, they could send their kids to school. It was good to see, and it was good to share. And one of the things that Tony did is that he did reward the people who'd been with the company for longest, because that was a scheme that was based on longevity as well as, not longevity, length of service as well as salary. This time it isn't been about that. So everyone who's been in the company of a certain date qualify for an option.
And so surely the listing has been a benefit, because there's something visible for people to be able to pin
Absolutely,
their
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a private company, as you know,
They didn't know
what's
what
the share
value.
worth? Nothing.
Yeah.
And that's also what happened to some of the directors who did own stock in the company. They were owners of stock in a liquid private company, but now they had tangible value. And I said the majority of them have still got their stock.
A couple of questions. You've mentioned a couple of times now that you expense your R&D, and you've sort of inferred that you have to do that for a certain reason. I mean, we're delighted that you do, and it's much easier for us to have clarity. Sure. But is there any reason, I'll put it another way, do your accountants come to you at the end of each year and argue that you should be putting cost onto your balance sheet?
Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
No, they don't come and argue that we should, because we've grown from a consultancy company where actually all the hours of the business that anybody's working on a project, which is money earning, it goes down on a job costing thing. So every job is very, very well costed, and I think it's one of our strengths that we've had. Very often you're doing development on a new rig, which is actually going to be paid for by the customer of that new rig. You tell him it's going to have this and that benefit. He likes that, and we do that development on the cost, or on the fact that he's buying a new rig. And a lot of our work, because we're on fairly small numbers, is actually developed in that way.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things we have been able to do is be a bit smarter with the patent box this year. And if you look at our tax, our business tax, it's 13%. And a lot of that is because of the capitalisation of some of the R&D and also the patent box relief.
Okay. Another question actually for Tony. In 2010, the market, you showed the global figures were down in automotive. How did the company perform in that year?
I mean, when the downturn came, I think I rather stupidly expected it just to be UK and the States suffering the downturn, because that's where the problems were with the banks. What I hadn't appreciated is how the Japanese companies, and Koreans for that matter, just turned off the capital expenditure immediately to protect themselves, obviously. And that was a surprise to me, but we kept everybody on. There wasn't strictly enough work to go and work to go around, and so we did actually make a loss in one of those years. But, as Tim said earlier on, we developed new products, and it's those products that have stood us in good stead when the recession was past.
And I'm aware of an organisation called the Transport Research Laboratory, TRL.
Yes, TRL.
Do you have any involvement with TRL?
We've worked with them on a number of projects over the years, and I'm going back many, many years, but these days...
Yeah, nothing in the last 3 years. And I guess the obvious question is, Ricardo? Is it going to be a Ricardo question? I mean, Ricardo is one of the organisations that we'd love to work with, if only we could find something to work with them on. But it's, Ricardo are more of a consultancy, and more latterly they've been a producer of product. But yes, we talk to Ricardo, but we wait the day we can work with them.
You mentioned that you now have some field support engineers out in the
Yes.
field. Are they embedded with clients, or do they have their own office and go to different clients?
Well, there's two types really. There's ones out in the regions, so you've got 2 in Japan. You've got a reseller or distributor who's committed to put engineering in at our, with our support. And then you've got a core based in Bradford-on-Avon who will follow the product out to the customer. And more importantly, when the customer phones in, they will be on that end of the line. It was a situation I saw about 2 years ago that our senior software guy was on the phone talking to a German customer about setting up. And all that time he was doing that, he was not doing the next generation of software upgrade. And it's just that point that companies come to where you stop multitasking so much because we do need to have a product pipeline, in which case we need a team of people who are working on that. So we have recruited people in who are dedicated on the technical support and also dedicated towards product development. And I just think that's what companies go through.
Yeah, no, I mean, my question was just where they're based, whether they're embedded with clients.
No, they're
or
in
whether
UK.
They're in the UK.
Yeah,
okay.
so we've got 3 or 4 in the UK and the team is there. And then we've got people out in the region. It's more important to have them out in the regions, especially, we've got...
Japan is...
In Japan office, yeah, where we're all sleeping, what we do is tend to read the last email first, because it kind of says, oh, problem over, and they go back.
Very good. Just coming back to my question about the major product lines, just to give me some sort of flavour, we've got a turnover figure of about 20 million. I'm sure certain product lines dominate that. With the largest, say, top 3 product lines, what volumes per year of each of those are you selling? Is it in the sort of below 10 or?
That's a difficult question to ask. I mean, let's start with the lab equipment. Basically, we make about 2.5 of those a year, because that's what the capacity lets us do. And sometimes they're high value, sometimes they're lower value, but that's where the order is, and that's where the orders take us out to. On the track testing equipment, it can be anything from a £35,000 single robot to a full £700,000 kit, ADAS kit. And if you add into the mix these soft targets, these guided soft targets which will be developed, they're around about £350,000 each. So you can't really sort of look at it in that kind of terms.
But in broad terms, it's pretty low volume but high value manufacturing.
It's changed in the last 5 years. We've got less single robot orders. We've got actually less orders, but more high value orders, which is what we expected would happen. And if you were to have a situation where you had a robot in a car being used for, say, collision testing, that's now been substituted by a driverless car. So it's definitely moving up the value chain, but you can't really sort of say there's been more robots sold and less of these. It's a good mix, and they are supporting a supporting mix.
But it's fundamentally low volume manufacturing. High value.
We're never going to be a lean manufacturing company.
Yeah.
Everything is tested. What we have been able to do, and it's been reflected in the margins over the last couple of years, is we have moved away from more batch manufacturing of engineers making robots to technicians and tool makers making on demand. And there's an efficiency there and a quality that actually is increased. So we've been able to shorten lead times, we've been able to hopefully improve quality. But that's just because there's more volume going through.
Then you can put the right people in the right roles.
We've tripled the volume of robots going through the plant. That requires a different set of tools. And we've actually recruited people to come in and do that for us.
Thanks very much. Then my next question was, you mentioned you'd recently been commissioned or you'd built a larger machine for Myra, which was for larger SUVs.
Well, that's now the standard machine, by the way. Well, that's just a good example. It's a good example of how customers drive the product. So when we're very good with our names, by the way. So we had the SPMM 4000, and now we've got the SPMM 5000.
So my question is, going beyond that, do you have in your sites machinery for testing larger vehicles like trucks and buses and things like that?
I should say, when we came to the market, we were talking about it, but that demand never really materialised.
But surely they need testing.
You would think, but actually the truck market is a smaller by actual revenue.
Afterwards. I'll give you a good reason why it's very difficult
we can
to do.
talk afterwards. Yeah, good.
I mean, it's a bit of heavy duty engineering, but also the truck companies don't have anything like the volume or the clout that the car makers have.
Okay, then finally, the simulators that you're now co-developing, are these full motion 3-axis?
Six-axis.
6-axis simulators, right.
Now, I've got two questions. First one should be quite straightforward. In terms of the new factory, how much cash is there still to spend in the current financial year?
7 million.
7 million. Okay, thanks.
Give or take $500,000.
Okay, and the second question, in terms of, you've spoken quite a lot about automated driving.
Yes.
But in terms of electric cars, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I understand they're a lot simpler drivetrain than does that affect your business or not?
No, I mean any dynamic change has to be tested, and curiously enough, when you take the engine away, you can hear all the road noise. So there's a lot of focus. Have you driven a Tesla? No. It's awfully noisy because you can hear all the bumps and thumps coming through the suspension. I mean, we have received recently orders from West Coast tech companies for the first time. So there are new entrants coming into this market. I mean, we believe that the whole R&D area for cars is entering into quite a golden period. The advent of new and novel drive systems, whether it be electric or hybrids, the new entrants coming into the marketplace, the whole fact that the Asian market is growing so rapidly in terms of car use, and they've gone from the simple car, now they're looking at the luxury car. Last time I was in Beijing, I didn't see a bike. When you went there 20 years ago, it was just millions of bikes, and now it's and they've responded by building a highway network that's 3 times the size of the US is. So it's not that they're not investing in infrastructure; it is colossal. I think this is really quite an exciting time to be in automotive.
Hi. It seems to me that the staff is very important because you talk about the software engineer with the mechanical. Everybody wants them, and they can go anywhere they want. So you want to grab that. To me, it seems that you have 90 engineers. I don't know the age profile, so a lot of them depends on how you either recruit the people or succession plan, or do you, because you need people for growth, further growth if you want. I know you probably recruit agency or that kind of thing, but the engineers, you still need more people. How about the diversity? Do you just rely on the UK engineers, or do you?
Well, no.
We have Chinese.
We have one Chinese engineer.
One Chinese girl engineer. Very good.
But I mean, the issue for me is that there aren't that many British graduate engineers coming through the engineering, electrical and mechanical engineering. There are a lot of foreign people being trained, and I would love to have access to them. We had an opportunity 5 years ago to bring Sue into the company, and it was hell of a job. It was so difficult, and it kind of annoys me that we've got talent in the universities that we could be using. Because the first thing is that, yes, diversity is very important because she can actually communicate with all the Chinese engineers. We also have engineers kind of associated with the region. So we've got Japanese-speaking engineers in Japan, German engineers in Germany. We train our distributors and resellers to actually take on responsibility. So in Korea, we've got an agency there that do a lot of training for us, and that's as much as we can do. Having said that, the last 4 hires on the mechanical have been an Italian, South African, Chinese with Michael. So yeah, we're doing our best. The biggest disappointment to me is the lack of female engineers that we have. Although the company has actually increased its female quotient, it's all on the admin side. But we watch. We
probably
watch and
not
wait.
even on the management board yet.
Love to. Yeah, more than happy. Right. You'd never get a more enthusiastic supporter.
No, I don't. Do you try to give training or apprenticeship?
Well, we do. Yes, we do apprenticeships. I have to say, we did an apprenticeship advert recently, and we got a very disappointing response. And yet we advertised for an assistant bookkeeper, and we got hundreds of people. So it is disappointing. And we do try to engage with the schools as much as possible. We do the day release where we can. There's a lot of activity with schools around the Wiltshire area. It just seems that engineering is still not being promoted as a nice career to go into, which is a shame, because you go to Germany and it's an acceptable thing. You get a business card with the name of the title of their job before their name. They're proud to be engineers.
Yes, following from that, I think the succession is always a big problem.
It is, and I think one of the ways we've addressed that, I mean, it helps when you're growing. It really helps when you're growing. And we have, we've got new graduates who joined 4 or 5 years ago who have now taken up positions and now have people coming underneath them. Those same guys, those sort of junior group of managers have now become senior groups of managers. And as much as we can do, that's what we try to do. So people can see evidence there is succession planning. And every time we develop a new product range, there's an opportunity for someone else to take responsibility. And the directors, who are mostly my age, they have no real interest now in moving for the organisation. So their job really is to bring these guys through the company.
But do you see any problem in, say, is a limitation of the company growth due to the recruitment?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Can you talk a little bit about the competition and also the risk of people, copying your machines?
So there's no one single competitor that does all that we do, but there are competitors that overlap. There's a company called MTS, a $700 million turnover company, and they do supply a KNC machine, an SPMM machine. And Tony butted heads with them about 20 years ago and kind of won. When it comes to the robots, we're pretty much dominant in that market, and there are some regional players. There's a company in Germany called Virco, who seem to be a university spin-out, therefore not-for-profit and kind of very irritating. There's another company that's very much focused in the chassis dyno. They make robots for chassis dynos, and they do look to move into our area from time to time. And then there are 1 or 2 little companies dotted around the world. But I was asked for that number recently. I reckon about 85% of the business that could be got is being got by ABD. Now, as that business becomes more attractive, there are people coming in, and we see them coming in from the side. We actually lost an order recently in China. So you need those shocks, otherwise you get arrogant and too overconfident. So we've got a range of new products coming through. We've got an upgrade on the software going through. We remain highly active in terms of understanding and anticipating customers' needs. There's not much more you can do. Competitors do not keep me awake at night.
Interesting, you lost that contract to a Chinese competitor.
No, it was a German competitor, and it was a relationship that they had in China that actually won them the business. But we still lost it.
Okay. So how easy is it for somebody to set up shop in this space and to...
It's quite difficult. It's quite difficult. I mean, the thing about this market is that it's moving almost faster than your ability to learn new things. You can't patent this stuff because it's too fast. I happen to believe that the Southwest manufacturing model is actually really very good. When it comes to making specialist machinery, it'd be very hard for someone to compete on price. And the thing about it, you've got to get it right. You can't, it's not like a knockoff Rolex that you've copied. You've actually asking this thing to do something. There's a great story. About 2 years ago, there was a Great Wall came in to see us. This is a big Chinese company. And we said, we've heard about this company in China called KHT. And they sell an SPMM machine. Yes, he said, we've got one. I said, great, how are you getting on? He said, that's why we're here buying yours. So I think it's
we did try and tell them when we were bidding for the first.
Yeah, I mean,
didn't believe us.
The temptation is goes, oh my God, this is shit. Why are you buying this? But actually, at the end of the day, there's a lot of value in the engineering that we put in there, and it's recognised, and it is recognised by the Chinese as well. There is a certain wish to buy an ABD robot because that shows you've got intent to become a top quality supplier and designer.
But it is interesting that nuclear reactors and trains, now the Western world is actually choosing to go with Chinese
absolutely.
providers. So how many years would it take for a Chinese company to be?
I don't think the market's big enough.
Okay.
At the end of the day, you could spend a lot of time and effort and get the market, but it's not huge. It's not a big opportunity. nuclear reactors, well, that could be massive, couldn't it? I mean, and of course that's a large strategic project for them to get their teeth into. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying it's difficult to see at this time.
So you offered us the big number, 109 billion in R&D. How much is the R&D spend in your particular niche, do you think?
Well, 20 million. There's a lot of money. I mean, I'm looking at, say, if you look at one of the up-and-coming companies, in my opinion, is Volvo. They're one to watch because they always had great engineers but no money. Now they've got Geely money and great engineers. And I think that the departments we're dealing with, especially on the driver assistance side, are spending probably 4 or 5 times more than they spend with us at this time on the development of the next generation of driverless cars. So that tells me that there is opportunity for us. And one of the things I always caution my directors and engineers, I said, we're always going to have more opportunities we can deal with. We've just got to pick the ones that work for us.
Thank you. Sorry, another quick bite of the cherry. What impact, positive or negative, do you foresee from Brexit?
I think it's got time to play. I mean, the positive's got to be the currency. We've seen a £300,000 benefit this year, where we saw a £45,000 loss the year before. We are seeing a bit of inflation on the purchase side, but our cost of goods in terms of materials is quite a small part of the actual sale.
Over the 30 years that we've been in business, I don't think I've ever had any real difficulty exporting to anywhere. Okay, you've got to pay the tariff maybe, you have to pay a bit more, you've got to do more paperwork, but you can still get the product in there.
Yeah. So not much of a problem, in short.
Well, I don't want to overplay it or underplay it. It is what it is. And I remember that there's always a moment, isn't there, when we went to list, North Korea was about to kick off and launch a nuclear strike, wasn't it? I mean, that was and we listed anyway, just in case. And then, when we were thinking about something else, a Brexit event came up. There's always something, and the thing is, you just can't worry about the macroeconomic. You talk to the customer and they say, well, our model years are planned for the next 10 years, Tim. That's the way it's going to be. Okay.
Competition doesn't keep you awake at night. What does?
Getting this new factory built, making sure we've got the succession of new products coming through. I think it was Pericles said that he didn't worry about the enemy, he worried about the actions of his generals. I don't think we're that worried about it, but there are succession issues that need to be resolved. We've got what I consider to be a good platform for the company's growth. And I think my conversation with my directors is, I don't want to be the only person worrying about the future. You've got to learn to worry about this as well. And I think we've just got to go through this cultural change. I mean, Tony kind of spoilt them for many years because he took it all on himself. But now we've got to share this opportunity. All right? Thank you very much.